Today, I'm going to present a 2011 study that attempted to examine the connection between culture and premenstrual syndrome. Premenstrual syndrome, or PMS, we all read about in the chapter this week. It's a combination of physical and mood disturbances that occur in the days before your period. Depending on the study, PMS is estimated to affect up to 80% of US women. PMS symptoms include cramping, anxiety, food cravings, insomnia, bouts of depression and crying, as well as mood swings. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder, on the other hand, or PMDD, is a severe, disabling form of PMS. It affects up to 10% of women, estimated anywhere between 2 and 10%, and is characterized in the DSM-5 as PMS so severe that it affects your occupation, your interpersonal relationships, and your life as a whole. So, while no one is saying that these premenstrual symptoms don't exist, there is a considerable pushback from many feminists on the characterization of their menstrual cycle as a pathological disorder. By taking a look at the history of women's health, many biases are evident. Perhaps one of the most striking historical parallels drawn is PMS to hysteria. PMS, similarly, is a huge catch-all diagnosis given only to women and lacks a clear, widely agreed-upon definition in the scientific community. There has also been some really fascinating research on lesbian couples. Lesbians are less likely to suffer from severe PMS, and researchers have explained this difference by noting the lack of restricting patriarchal expectations of femininity in lesbian couples. They also imply that this means that PMS is more subjective than most people would think. Finally, the people who assert that PMS is a social construct cite the fact that a PMS or PMDD diagnosis is much, much more common in Western countries like the United States than it is anywhere else in the world. So today, I would like to present a study, one of the only studies that does a cross-cultural analysis of the prevalence of PMS and PMDD. This study looked at adolescent women in a city in Ohio, as well as 2 cities in Nigeria. This study tested the hypothesis that PMS and PMDD are specific to Western culture. There was 537 participants. They were recruited from clinics in 3 different cities. Akron, Ohio, which is a mid-sized US city whose predominantly Caucasian residents range from lower to upper class. Lagos, Nigeria, which is a highly educated, densely populated commercial centers whose residents are primarily Christian. And Maiduguri, Nigeria, a more rural city characterized by low literacy rates and whose residents are predominantly Muslim. So this is a wide range of cultures. These participants were aged 13 to 21, with an average age of 16.9 years old, were postmenarchal, meaning they'd already had their first period, were not mothers, and were mostly single. The method of the study was to give these participants 2 questionnaires, the first of which dealt with basic demographics and information like, how old were you when you had your first period? What is the duration of your average period? And the second of which was called the Premenstrual Symptom Screening Tool, or the PSST. The PSST asked participants, in the past year, have you noticed any of the following symptoms 1 to 2 weeks before your menstrual period? Following that question were all of the symptoms related to PMDD as defined by the DSM-5. Participants then rated the severity on a 1 to 4 Likert scale. It also asked questions that tried to see if those symptoms were interfering with their daily lives. And the results were interesting. The prevalence of severe PMS was 14.5% overall in the 3 cities. 15% of participants in Akron, 12.4% of the participants in Maiduguri, and 16.3% of participants in Lagos reported severe PMS. With a p-value of 0.546, these differences were not statistically significant. The prevalence of PMDD was 4.1% in all three cities, on average. 2.9% of participants in Akron, 6.5% of participants in Medjugorje, and 3.1% of participants in Lagos reported PMDD. Note that although visually Medjugorje looks much higher than the other two cities, the difference is not statistically significant, with a p-value of 1.67. The results of that study clearly show that there is no difference in the prevalence of PMS and PMDD in Nigeria and the United States. So, if PMS and PMDD are not cultural constructs, might they be an adaptive advantage? The evolutionary perspective on PMS is actually very interesting. In hunter-gatherer populations, women were pregnant or nursing so often that an actual menstrual cycle was actually quite rare in comparison to today's standards. To expand on this, some researchers hypothesize that PMS evolved as an adaptive advantage. Women with PMS were obviously cycling and were therefore not pregnant or nursing, meaning they had an infertile mate. PMS and its symptoms, such as anger, irritability, and sadness, could have evolved to help the women dissolve this evolutionary disadvantageous pair bond. Now, there are limitations to this hypothesis and the study. Some factors, like the rate of the use of birth control in the three cities, were not controlled for. Also, this only looked at adolescent women in only 2 countries and relied on self-reported data. So, in conclusion, despite the limitations of this study, it clearly showed that little to no difference exists in the prevalence of PMS and PMDD between the United States and Nigeria. Further research must be done, but for now we have some very compelling evidence that goes against the notion that PMS is culture-specific.